Right, well, Sophia, thank you for being the first ever face-to-face person on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Why don't we start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself? And we've kind of known each other for a little while now.
Yes.
It's been a little while. So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and how we met and what's been going on in your tuition world.
Well, I left the classroom, gosh, it's coming up to 2 years now. So not January gone, January previously. I was head of science then when I left, and took a break to start my tuition business. And then, spent 9 months or so starting to build up the tuition business. Ended up going back to the classroom on a sort of maternity cover position to help out a local school.
Yeah.
Whilst I continued building the business. And now we're at a point where Pineapple Tuition has built up to doing a one-to-one work myself. I've got tutors that work for me now, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And now it's time for me to leave the classroom again.
And you're leaving this week?
Yes, literally Friday.
How did it feel?
Very exciting,
Yeah.
very nervous, quite scared if I'm honest, but also really, really excited for September and all the opportunities.
So before we, or when we just met just now, before we sort of press record, you're saying like it's quite scary, but you've been doing this for a little while, so you understand like the business and you've already invested quite a bit in yourself already. What do you think's the biggest hurdle right now?
Just keeping the focus on my goals and what I need to do for the next couple of months, I think is the biggest hurdle.
Okay.
And I think through the whole journey, it's always been, I'm very much a person where I think I must be ADHD, so I can see the traits in me, and it's not uncommon in entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But yeah, keeping the focus on one goal, because I have been working on sort of multiple projects over the last couple of months, and it's always trying to come back to the goal and working on my tuition and my business moving forward. Including the freelance stuff as well. But again, focus.
So when you say there's lots going on, like, so you have your tuition business, which for you is science, but if you've got other tutors with you that do more than science, is it more than that?
Yes. So around last Easter time, I took on 10 tutors into the business, and they do now teach a range of subjects. I've got a couple of main ones that work for me. Actually, I used to be his form tutor when he was at school.
Oh, wow.
And we randomly connected through LinkedIn a while ago, and he's now head of chemistry at school that he works at. And so that it was quite an interesting way to I didn't realise who he was, and then we had that conversation. So he does he complements me quite well in that I'm a biology specialist, he's a chemistry specialist.
Okay.
He is also really, really good at what he does.
Yeah.
And so that's really helped to drive the science side of things forward for me. Still looking for a physicist that is amazing. So if anybody knows a physicist that's amazing, send them my way. But yes, we do offer a range of subjects at GCSE and A-level.
Okay.
I made a conscious decision to only take on tutors that were qualified tutors and QTS status, which I know not everybody agrees with working like that, but in terms of boundaries in the business. And also that had classroom experience in the UK, and that's really, really important.
I think you're right, and a lot of the particularly larger ones will go, no, QTS, 2 years in school setting, particularly UK, and then there might be other things around that, but they seem to be the non-negotiables. That sounds quite safe as well, because then you're not having to worry about certain things, or maybe certain things are just assumed at that point. Look, you've managed it and we're okay to go forward.
To be honest, it's the quality of service. So my kind of niche is the students that are really looking for those top end grades. So really hitting kind of grade 7, 8s and 9s at GCSE, grade A's and B's at A-level, and that always has been the case. And so to deliver that high quality service, so I want to be that go-to company that people come to, that my child wants to go into medicine, into dentistry, into veterinary courses, and this is the go-to person. And that always is that's always the kind of goal.
So sounds like you've gone quite deep in who your ideal client is.
Yes.
So what's that process been like? Because there's when I first started delivering courses and helping tutors and business owners, one of the first things where people roll their eyes for the first time is when we start talking about ideal clients. So I know how important it is to even if you have a rough idea, it just makes life a lot easier in terms of how you message. How did you drill down and come up with this is where my niche is going to be? Because science is niche enough.
Yes.
But then it's like this extra layer on top.
And there was another layer on top of that. Like,
Okay.
I mean, it went quite deep. So initially it was, so let's go back 10 years.
Yeah.
I was on my first maternity leave in school, and during that, a few people, I was bored, if I'm honest, and I ended up going to people's houses, and we lived in London at the time, and it was very much a case of I was going to people's houses and teaching them for an hour. I then ended up in the kind of preceding years after that, travelling from London to Maidstone, actually, funny enough, to teach people out there. And it was, as I had more and more clients come on board, I could see more and more what I was delivering compared to what they wanted. And that starts kind of focusing in on, for me, it's like, well, actually, all these kids want a really high quality tutor. Yeah, that's me. But a lot of them were, we need you because we want to get into medicine. We need you because we want to get into dentistry. And the students going into those courses, there was just a lot of satisfaction for me in finding that match. And then recently, as we add on the layers and I start going back to ideal client more, I don't like doing it, the ICA work. I do find it boring, but it has been really helpful in knowing that most of the parents that I work with, they tend to be professionals actually working within the education sector. I tend to get a lot of, what's gone out of my head? A lot of students actually are from private schools that come to me. And so you start seeing patterns, and I think there's two ways of doing it. You can market to those people, or the way that I've sort of ended up doing it is I've looked at who is attracted to me and formed this kind of picture and actually made that match who I want to work with.
I think that's really refreshing, because when I've done business courses in the past and connected with business coaches very early on, there was an element of being forced into it, like this could be your ideal client, and I'm like, actually sometimes I don't know, and I was really vague with it, and I think that's okay. I now think, well, that's okay, because one, the niche will happen over time, and you're going to listen to the people that you are working with, and you're either going to go, I really like working with these sorts of people, or I don't.
And that was a real driver for me as well, because it was the thing of, you've been in school, you've always been told what to do. I was micromanaged for a very long time, and even as head of department I was micromanaged, and then the thought suddenly started to become clear to me that actually I can choose what I do. I've got the choice. I can say no to people. That was a real big deal for me, being able to go, actually, I don't think you're quite the right fit for me. I think, I can refer you to someone who might be more appropriate, or you meet, this is why we always have consultations, and it's for me as much as it is for the client to know that we're a good match. And as I said, I was just always trying to be honest. Look, if it's not going to work, I'm really sorry, I don't think I can help you. There is always that thing. I had one student years ago, and he was aiming for medical school and dental school, medicine. I think he wanted to do medicine. And within the first 2 lessons, this was a face-to-face, I was in London, and it was 2 lessons in or 3 lessons in, and he hadn't done the work I'd set for him. He wasn't putting in the work, and I just said to Mum, look, don't waste your money. Why would you, I'm not, if you're not prepared to do the work, I can't work with you, because you're not going to get the results that you want. It has to be a two-way thing. And then he soon straightened up, so we were good. Got the result we wanted. He got an A-star in biology in the end, so yeah, we got where we wanted to be.
Is that another lesson in just how we need to communicate as like mentors to people, but also as a business owner, like that honesty and integrity up front?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important, because sometimes having that clarity, I think, is so important. And I think I had the benefits of being head of department, so I know how important it is to be clear in giving instructions. Even in the classroom, same thing, having the clarity. If you can transfer that into your business, I think it kind of preempts the issues before they come up, and you kind of anticipate, right, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Because there's nothing worse than doing the whole thing of dealing with all the little problems as they're coming through. I think the ideal for me is preempting them.
Do you that you're not new to business, so like some of this stuff, do you still feel new?
It's all a learning curve.
I don't think it ever ends, like, but because you've got some experience, like previously, like you kind of came away from school to set up the business, and then you went back. Do you think you're coming at it with a different perspective this time around?
Yes.
Even if it still feels new.
I like that it feels new. I like the process of learning. I like the fact that I'm back to being a lifelong learner. I don't have to go and do a master's or a PhD to be able to do that. and yeah, it is refreshing, and I think it is helpful to know what I've learned in the past and how I'm moving myself on. There's all, just keep learning. That's the thing, because that's what we teach at the end of the day.
I recorded a podcast with Jane on Monday, and we was talking about that personal development.
Yes.
And how scary it can be when you're right now, you're responsible for it. What do you invest in? What's going to be useful? And then you look at it and you go, well, is it really going to cost that much?
Yes.
And then, cost becomes part of the decision making, which you don't really, it has to be there, but also that you invest in too soon. We've had that conversation, or whether it's really going to be impactful, whether you trust yourself to then do the work that's required. What's been your process around that the last few years?
There's been recently, I've been reflecting a lot on what I have invested in the past and why hasn't it worked in the past, because my personal development journey started sort of 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So I've sort of come out of uni, and I was always, again, I was into sort of NLP, Tony Robbins, like I went to UPW, and all that personal development stuff. I just loved it, and still do love it so much.
Yeah.
But it was very much I think for me, it's that feeling of safety of learning. I wasn't actually putting things into action. I'll try a few little things, but not really seriously enough. I don't think I necessarily had the push that I needed, because I knew I had a job to go back to. And it's that kind of, I suppose, the whole burning the boats thing that's really kind of this time around, sort of 20 years now down the line.
Yeah.
When you're back to the wall and actually you've got no choice but to make it work.
Yeah.
But not in a negative way, in a kind of, I've come this far, and I'm not come this far just to come this far.
Yeah.
It becomes really exciting, and you can start to see where the things you've learned in the past and now start coming into play and kind of drawing together. It's a weird feeling, but taking the action is the biggest thing.
There was something which I listened to quite a while ago, 7-8 months ago, and I resonated with this, or I could recognise this in myself when I was at school. I used to sit in the staff room at lunchtime, and I'd be like, oh, there must be a better way to earn 30k a year. There's got to be a better way than this to earn 30,000 a year. And everyone would look at me as if I'm mad. And I'm very much like, well, I've just read this book and it's saying this, and this book's saying that. And this thing I listened to about 7-8 months ago was saying that we can get caught up in the reading, we can get caught up in the listening to podcasts now, we can go to events, and we get like this. They called it like that's mental masturbation. You're just like doing all of this stuff, but you're not really doing it for real. And so you have to go and take some action. What's the difference with someone who is stuck listening to podcasts or reading the books, or maybe even like connecting and going a one step further and going to a business conference? What's the difference between those people who are just attending and lurking to those who are taking action, do you think?
I don't know. There is, I mean, for me, it was, as I said, it was a sort of, I had to make it happen. You've got to have that drive to do it. Recognizing that there's a safety, like the feeling safe is such a big, so it's the feeling safe and the, like, am I good enough issue, right? Those two together. And so initially it was like, I kind of knew I was good enough, but again, didn't take the action. And the feeling of safety came from the job and having that 30k a year and knowing that that's what, so why would I want more? And then you've got society impacting that with, why do you want more? Like, why are you being so weird? Like, you've got a job, you've got set job security, you can come in every day, do your job, go home. I think I just got to a point of, I've been existing. I came back from maternity leave and my head teacher had changed. And expectations were different, the scenario all changed, and suddenly, like, I was working till 11 o'clock at night with a 1-year-old after working in school all day, and I was on my knees, and it was for years and years and years, I was on my knees just moving through, and I just got to a point of, there has to be something better. And then you go back to the personal development, well, I know there is, why am I not acting on it? And so there's that internal conflict that's happening with, I don't know, consciously it's kind of, I don't know, the conscious and unconscious, like as I said, the internal battle is a real thing.
I don't know how common this is, because it's often just the people who have made it are telling the story. So I think sometimes it's skewed. but I've been to a lot of conferences and listened to keynote speakers, and there is a commonality where somebody's either had a life-changing event, for example, starting a family, or losing it all. And so what have they got to lose? And that was certainly the way I felt. And I was like, well, they've asked me to leave school. So what am I going to do? And then once I got over myself and did the whole grieving bit, and I was like, bloody hell, I know I'm better than this. Oh my God, I can go and do something else. But I had to experience that bit first. So I was forced out of the comfort zone. Because you're right about safety. Teaching is not a well-paid job, but it pays well enough to go, I'm okay. You know,
that's the battle, isn't it? It's that thing of what's good enough, and the scariness of not having that, again, the safety, the financial safety, but also the day-to-day, you know what to expect in a teaching day and a teaching timetable. In terms of life changes, yes, 100% I agree with you. I was in a similar situation where the new head had come in, and I was told after 7 years of doing my job with no issues that I wasn't good enough to do the job. And it was a real realization of actually all this stability that I think that I've created around myself, the safety that I think is around myself, actually could be taken away at any moment. And not just in terms of aspects of a job, like personally, like in terms of health as well, like who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
And I think I really was tested in terms of, I was on my knees, I was really like, okay, going through the whole sort of competency process, and it got to a point of actually, they just kept telling me that wasn't good enough. And I knew inside me, I'd done enough work up until that point that I knew what bloody was. And then again, there's this battle, and it was, the option was given to me of, why don't you stop being head of department, but become a classroom teacher? And then suddenly that ignited the fire in me of like, hang on a minute. And I worked out the numbers, how much money that would save the schools, the financial aspect of it, as well as the fact, again, there's been other issues around it. It's a wider issue. But no, it was, no, why should I do that? And I'd had some personal issues going on as well. And the conversation with the head, and word for word, it was, when I handed in my resignation, the question, what the head said to me was, well, what's this? And it was just for Christmas. And my answer was, it's not a Christmas card. And that, again, that power that I felt in me on that day, when I'd already given them my verbal resignation at the meeting that we'd had, with no union rep there was a member of HR sitting in the room, and I wasn't in a union. Anyone who's listening, get yourself a union, you know, thinking on the pay scale that I was on, I wasn't eligible, whatever, that was that's completely my fault. But at the meeting, it was, you're not going to pass these targets that you've been given. And so here's your option. And I then said, look, well, in which case I'd like to verbally give you my resignation. And at that point, and I knew I'd made the right decision, as soon as the head turned around and went, I just need to leave the room for a minute, because she was not expecting that. And that was the moment where I took my power back.
Well, what did she expect then?
She'd expected me to say, I think, oh yeah, I'll be a classroom teacher then.
So they still wanted you, they just didn't want you, they didn't want to pay you as the leader on the leadership spine. Okay.
I'd had a couple of years before, I'd applied for a job elsewhere. The then head had called me into the classroom and said, for all intents and purposes, the conversation was, what do you want? And I walked out of that room because I emailed her to say, just out of courtesy to let you know, I've applied for this job and they might be asking you for a reference. It was just a professional courtesy thing to do. And I was in the office the next day, and it was, well, basically in a very nice conversation, we really want to keep you what you want. And so I walked out the room with significant pay rise, with another member of staff on my department, because my technical team needed more support. And then a few years later, I'm told I'm not good enough to do the job. It doesn't make sense.
It's not, and it's not rocket science to work out what's going on. I think that first of all, that is a really stressful way of managing any company. And like I'm not saying it doesn't happen in corporate world, because it does, but people have processes and protections in place. I think if you are a teacher and not in the union, just go and get in the union, because it's just like the thing. And it's not even the fact that you probably would have a union rep there, because sometimes it's rare at the early stage, but you have a phone call and someone at the end, and that's what really helped me, because my school said to me, oh, we don't want to get the unions involved. I'd been chatting to the unions for weeks, I just didn't tell them, and it structured every conversation I had, because we are at that. If anybody's at that stage, you are at your most vulnerable, and you don't make decisions based on any logic because you're emotional, and then you start to think, well, just the gremlins in your head start saying, well, you need to say this, you need to do this, and this is the next step. But actually, you don't have to do anything. You can have someone else guide you through every step. And it is I mean, I know, like, we're sharing our experiences. I'm sure there's others who have had similar experience to that, either with or without union reps, and they can contest to the fact that it's not a very pleasant process when you're going through it.
No, the other thing I just want to add is, if this is happening to you and you are not in a union, I contacted ACAS, and ACAS were really, really helpful.
Oh, that's good to know.
And I got some really, really good advice. And, you know, and again, you have a certain period of time within which to act against what's happening to you. But unfortunately, for a lot of teachers, there's that time period where you are grieving and you are healing and you are having to kind of build yourself up again. And so you're not always within that window to act on it. And I made the conscious decision not to take it further. And against ACAS's advice, I might add, because I was in a place where I was ready to rebuild my life and start again, and then I was going for it.
ACAS is not a bad shout just to contact in any case, even if you're with a union, because they'll just give you some of the employment stuff and actually determine whether something naughty is going on, and they'll guide you. So yeah, look, let's switch it back on, right? Because to your business, let's switch the light back onto this, because you're leaving school on Friday, final day. You was telling me before about some things happening over the summer for the first time.
Yes.
Like, so your business feels like it's ready for you to be in there full time.
I think so.
What does the next year look like?
I think it's gonna be mad, like crazy good mad. This year I've spent a lot of time putting things in place that are really, for me, it was making connections. So the time that I spent building a business initially, I started to re-establish relationships and connecting with people. And as these things always turn out, like the synchronicities of people contacting me to work on certain projects and do certain things. So there's a lot of sort of almost options available in front of me. So that's nice to know. It's comforting to know I've got a lot of options. But also with going back to the focus that we talked about earlier on, I'm going off topic at the same time, and focusing on building a tuition. So in terms of business model, I've done so much one-to-one work this year, and I've absolutely loved it. Like, you know, I can say hand on heart that pretty much without fail, every client that I've worked with, because of that selection process as well, it's been really exciting to work with them, and I've really always wanted to, really excited to get working and get going, and got some fantastic results. Now we're switching into looking at group tuition. So my model now for September is really the vast majority of my time is going to be spent teaching groups. So more impact, reaching more students, and the kind of precursor to that is the summer courses, which is the first time that we've run those. And so that really is for students that are transitioning. So year 9, year 10, year 11 for GCSE science, so just focusing on science. Really getting kids set for coming into September, really confident, really clear, right, I know this stuff really well, I know what I need to do, I can crack on. And then the A-level kids as well.
So, and because a lot of GCSE tutors will be going, really, you're doing summer sessions for like GCSE people? How is it, and how was the take up?
It's the first time I've done a kind of sort of launch as such, so to have a definite start date, because it's always kind of been a rolling process. So for me, it's been a massive learning curve, with the marketing, with the kind of lead generation aspect of things, the onboarding and the delivery. And I think I've made a conscious decision this year, that I was speaking to my mail about, actually, is that end of June next year, the one-to-one, like everything is stopping at the end of June. Like, I'm consciously making a decision that there is no more tuition in July, because I need July to recover from the exam period. I need July to spend with my kids, to plan if I'm doing, pretty much I'm going to do summer courses next year as well. But that whole month of July is just all about getting ready, getting set for the next academic year.
I like it. I wrote down a note there about how we measure success, because it'll be really easy for people to go, it's only successful if. but actually when you're launching something for the first time, the success is getting the launch materials ready, the launch is going what worked, what didn't work.
Yes.
And it's like looking at those other metrics
Yes.
that isn't just about how many children you have, how much money you've made over the summer, which will happen.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, looking at those little things, because once you've made these things once, you don't have to spend that time again.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just makes life so much easier. So I think that's really important for people to hear, because we get stuck thinking, like, and I do this too. I'm guilty of that, where I go, I made X amount last month, or I launched this thing and it's made this amount. But actually, the success criteria should be, I created that workbook, or those emails were read by 50% of the people, or it's good signs, those kind of things. So measuring your success in the right way is really important. So
as well.
Yeah.
So like, who am I now? Because I was very much that kind of I've only got this like 2 kids signed up for my course. But actually, I'm gonna go through that process is the first thing. But also a year ago, that course didn't exist. I didn't have people contacting me asking me about X, Y, Z. I've had this many leads coming in this week. And so if that's who I was a year ago, and here's who I am now, first of all, well done, so pat on my back, and then flipping it, who am I going to be in a year's time?
Exactly.
And that's where the excitement bit comes. It's not, it's almost distancing yourself from what's going on and looking at who you are as a person, and that's where your personal development comes in again.
Do you, like, because we said before about like what you've been up to, and you were saying you went to the conference in Manchester, which is Carrie Ann's.
Yes, the STEM
conference. STEAM. Oh yeah, it is STEAM. Yeah, STEAM. And you're speaking next year.
Yes.
So it's like coming out of your comfort zone into doing something completely different.
It's a little bit coming out of my comfort zone. I used to speak years and years ago, which was about 10 years ago. So my dad's got a charity, we've got a hospital out in Pakistan, and I'm a trustee of that charity. And so I did a bit of speaking, and it's like teaching in a classroom really, but and so I loved it at the time, and it was always one of the things that's kind of kept dropping lower and lower onto the list to actually go out and speak in audiences. I absolutely got such a buzz from it. And so I'm going.
It's an old skill, really.
Say that again.
An old skill. You're bringing back an old skill.
Teaching for 17 years.
Yeah, but we don't often see it like that, though, do we? I do. I'm the same, but I don't do a lot of talking in front of large audiences, so I don't know. But that is the way that I've seen it before, and I've often seen teachers or ex-teachers on stage, and you go, well, that's where they get their skills from, isn't it?
Yes.
They cut their teeth in front of
the
harshest audience on earth, which is teenagers often.
Yes, that's it. You can't get in front of you. Like I teach current school this year. I teach every single student in year 9.
Wow.
And like the differences between them, and that always has been for me the most difficult year group. It's when puberty's kicking in, and we're kind of maturing. And I just think, gosh, you can do that and get them engaged, get them learning, get them doing everything. Yeah,
I like the mindset there. Well, mindset's quite the word, because we were going to talk about that a little bit more. That switch from, well, I think it's a big topic, and for us to get into it now, probably we'd need hours.
Yes.
But that switch from staying in your comfort zone to relying on yourself, how have you managed the mindset around that this time around?
I think this time around has been very different. I feel like it's always been building up in the background. I am very much more hands-on and practical with how I manage my own mindset now.
Okay.
Initially, it was very much, there was almost an element of I can't control what's going on here. So if you're having an up day or a down day, it felt not in my control.
Yeah.
And I think a big thing in me shifting into this year has been, I can have that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I harboured a lot of resentment for other adults around me as I was growing up. No one told me that I'd have these challenges when I was this age.
Yeah.
No one said it was going to be this hard. You'd have to think about like the kids and the home and the money and the car and the house, and why didn't anyone teach you this? And I think looking back now, it's like I probably wouldn't have listened. Had they taught me. So you have to go on that journey, but also I don't think I put myself around enough people that were doing the practical things, that were doing the gratitude work, doing the journaling, doing the meditation, the hypnosis, like all the things that you hear people do. It was almost outside of me, and now I've slowly brought those things in. Sharon Corley's been absolutely pivotal in just listening to her pit pony, listening to her interviews with you, in the Facebook group, and actually making it a normal thing to do those things to get your mindset straight. Like you don't have to have something wrong with you to work on that mindset stuff. It can be just a day-to-day thing that you do, and that's all right. There's nothing wrong with you. I think that's a big learning point for me.
So there's a lot to take away there, because I often reflect back and go, why have I waited until this point to do something about that, or the way I feel about something, or perhaps gone, oh, I've noticed I'm not doing this, why am I doing it, and then doing the work rather than just staying on top of it. So for you, there was a little bit of like gratitude, journaling, or just journaling. Anything else? Meditation?
The meditation. So I do. It's a lot of woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
And being a scientist, there was again that internal battle that happened, but it's a lot about awareness and that self-awareness. And I've heard you recently talk about self-awareness, of recognizing I've got this feeling, and okay, right, so it's capturing it before it becomes too big to handle. And I think that there's such a power in, you know, I woke up this morning and I know I had like 4 Kit Kats yesterday, and I haven't done it for a long time, and I could see exactly what was happening. It was like I was watching myself. And I'll tell you, and this is me open, honest, and upfront, it was a self-sabotage thing, because I know that I will eat to get back to that feeling of safety. And I knew, because I knew I was coming here today, and it was out of my comfort zone. It was becoming visible. It was sharing stuff. It was, you know, and I could see it happening. So I woke up this morning and thought, Sophie, you've done it. Now we've got to deal with it. So we went to the gratitude, grounding on grass, grounding on sand at the beach is the other thing as well, with shoes and socks off. The hypnosis is very, very powerful for me. So I'll listen to a hypnosis while I'm asleep. And that is to do with sort of self-healing, and to do with sort of like lucid dreaming stuff as well. It's fun stuff to play around with.
Right. That scares me a little bit, the hypnosis stuff. Do you know what? To the point where I almost want to go and find out way more about it.
Yes.
I met someone a couple of years ago, and she felt the same as me, like, but she was a year ahead of me. So she went and got trained in it, and she was like, yeah, now I can hypnotize people. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. I'm still not sure. There's, because I think I've been to, grew up watching Paul McKenna on TV.
Yes.
So just watching people like jumping around like frogs and whatever else. And then I went on a holiday. This was going back a long, long time. And the guy on stage was hypnotizing people. And it was just, that's in my mind, that's what hypnosis is. But I know it's not that, but
I think
it's wary. So if I jump around like a frog in a minute, Sophie's got me.
I'm trying hypnotist. I'd love to be. I would love to be. I think the power of suggestion, if we just take it back to that, I used at the beginning of my teaching career, I looked into NLP and like the linguistics of the words that we actually use. And I dug into that so deeply. And it was things like, and I was actually speaking to a teacher about it yesterday, but if you're trying to get a student to do something, even your own children, you want them to do something, you can use your words to give them choices, but both of those choices can be things you want them to do. And we kind of do it anyway, you know, so children come in and they're not opening their book to start the work, they're having a chat or whatever. Well, you know, Joe Blogs, are you gonna, I don't know, are you gonna do question 1 first, or are you gonna do question 2 first? Or are you gonna put bag down on the table first, or are you gonna open your book first? You give them the 2 choices, and both of them are things that you want them to do. Like, there's so many powerful things in linguistics that are really, really, like, you can use them to your advantage.
I don't know NLP well enough. Something that was recommended to me quite a long time ago was reading a book called The Kabbalion. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I've heard of it, I haven't read it.
It's really weird. It's really strange. But there was a section in, well, it's a couple of sections in there. First of all, it was about everything starts in the mind. So we can't do anything, like this business wouldn't exist unless it started in somebody's mind, right? So, and we could do that about anything. Everything starts up here. We dream it, we can make it a reality within reason. So even the way we feel about ourselves then can start in the mind, and then it goes into like the words we use, which pretty much mirrors what you're saying. So even like what we think of ourselves will then come out in the way that we behave and the way that we continue to think about ourselves. So we have to really catch these things. But there's a section in there which goes, and this is where I stopped because it was going way above my head. But this thing that absolutely resonated, which was the energy. So we go woo again.
Yeah.
We are literally balls of energy.
Yes.
We're made of it. The atoms are flying around. Although there's still an element of me that goes, why do atoms stop moving when you look at them? What's the bit that moves? What's the bit that stops moving? Is it the electron?
The electron moves.
And then, but when you look at it through a microscope, it stops. Is that right?
Not quite. When you look at it through, well,
Are we going too deep?
We will go, but when you're looking at it, when you see a picture of an atom, that is just a moment in time.
Yeah.
Right. So the electrons, everything's still.
Yeah.
Right. But the electrons are moving constantly. We are energy, and
so
I don't know if we're going to do.
Yeah, probably. But there's like this thing out there, like when you look at something, when you look at it and it is an atom, it changes its behavior because it knows it's being looked at, right? So it's very strange, but it is very deep, very deep. So, but the fact that we are, so put that to the side, put a pin in that, go and research. That's really interesting.
I love it.
But the fact that we are literally made up of things spinning around and moving means we are energy, and we have these vibrations, we have this vibrational energy. And when I was being taught about this, it was like, look, we all have different frequencies, therefore, because if we're energy, we're making frequencies leaving our body. That's why there's some people we get on with. And sometimes you can walk into a room and you go, oh, something's happened, because you can just feel it. So yeah, you can just feel it, and it's you're just sensing things that's going on. Also, to sort of put a bit of light in the situation is why I hate the bagpipes. I found out. I think it's a complete. I hate the noise of the bagpipes. It's awful. Like
it's some past life stuff you want to get.
Well, I don't know. But every time I'm like, it makes me go, oh, what? And then I won't go into it. But my family take the mick out of me because we do like a New Year's Day walk, and where we walk always on New Year's Day, there's a guy at the top, so the Minis Bay, there's a beach close to here, plays a bagpipe, and I'm like, I don't want to go and see the bagpipe go because it annoys the noise. And all my family, oh, it's such a magical sound. I'm like, are you joking? It like, oh, it makes me.
Do you know what? This might be a bit too real. I met a lady once years ago, and she could never wear necklaces, and we were at some retreat or something like that. And there was another lady who, like, we looked at past life stuff, and it turned out that in a past life, there was something to do with she was a witch and she was hung.
Oh wow!
And that connected to.
No way! That's really strange.
It was really weird. It's really weird stuff. And again, I don't know where I am with all that kind of past life stuff.
Yeah, sure.
It starts going really deep.
Yeah. So it could be.
Even with that vibration energy, so there's two things. Abraham Hicks, if you looked at him, right, YouTube, Abraham Hicks. Okay. Vibrational energy, frequencies, matching frequencies, raising frequencies, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
the raising frequencies is quality. I love that.
But also remembering that with all this frequency work and all the energy work that you're doing, ultimately what your body wants, what your brain wants, is to go back to safety.
Yeah.
And that is, you're always going to have that battle. But for me, I found it's being able to live with that constant battle. Like, can I live with it? And realizing that recently as well. Actually, you're always going to have that pull. You're always going to have that little bit of tension that you're going to work against. And like, can you make it work in your favor? And that becomes a game. And that's fun. Yes, and that's the reframe. Yes. Isn't it? Yeah. Have you ever read the Shoe Dog book by the guy who created Nike? I always forget his name, Phil Knight. Again, heard of it, haven't read it. I consider it a business book. It's not. It's an autobiography. Yes. But he talks a lot about the growing the business because it was basically his life. Yeah. And there's some really interesting things in there about every stage. There's a big problem, and then you go up and I think we wish away some of our life sometimes. We go, if we can get to this point. If only I can get to this point. But what about the journey? Yeah, and you've got you have to slow down to appreciate it though, don't you? And that's the bit, like, I'm finding, again, moving energetically, it's like the beginning of the business, it's like you've got no money, and I'm like, do you know what? The frequency was low. I'm feeling a bit rubbish. I really need to get my nails done, and there's this massive resistance to why would you want to spend the money getting your nails done? You're like, you don't have the money. Actually, I did have the money in my account. I just chose that I didn't want to spend it in that way. And then I just got to a point of, like, I've almost flicked and went, I'm going to get my nails done. So I'm sitting there, and now pretty much without fail, every time I'm in the nail place getting my nails done, I'll have a Stripe notification come in, someone's paid me. And I'm just, now it's like, again, it's a reframe with, like, I go and get my nails done. I go out with the kids and go and have a fun time and, go and take them off to cinema or whatever. I get Stripe notifications. Without fail, it happens. The energy thing is strange. I can't explain it. finish, do you have to? It's like the whole, we can't burn electricity thing.
I'd love.
Let's go with
Do you know why I try? Is because I'd like other people to trust the process.
Yes.
So I talk about it in the most simplistic way. Like, if you create it, something will happen, right? So whether you do the summer sessions, for example, something will happen, and it doesn't have to be full sold out stuff. Something will happen from the energy that you put out there.
Yes.
And like, I decided to go to China on the trade thing with TTA.
Yeah.
No idea what I'm doing, but I just feel that I felt a really strong urge, like, oh, this would be really interesting to go. And my measurement of success is I might meet some interesting people, and it's a big investment of time and money.
Yeah.
What's the best thing that could happen is I might end up running an international agency, even if it was small in the first instance. And I'm also at the point where if I go, then I'm at least putting the energy out there to see what happens. And that's quite a big thing. But some of us have to start a little bit smaller. Sometimes it's like, I need to put this post on social media. And then we look at it and we go, oh no, that's not good enough. Or about to have a call with a parent who wants something. And then we start doubting ourselves 5 minutes before the call. And this is where our energy and vibrational energy comes into play, because we have to lift ourselves up for that call. Otherwise, it's not going to sell or it's not going to work.
I tend to try and catch it before we get to that point.
Yeah.
I can now, I feel like I know myself enough that I can anticipate that I've got something on my list and I know I don't want it. Like, I've got a parent who's got backed up on their bills. They've not paid a particular invoice. And I know I've got to make that call and I know I don't want to. And past me would have been leaving it on the list and ignoring it and procrastinating over it. But you know what? I'm either going to spend a week worrying about it, or I could just call her. And it's anticipating and catching before you get into that mindset of doing it. And I found that really, really powerful, almost like a robotic way of doing things, working for your list and taking the emotion out of it.
Do you think some of those things end up becoming muscle memory as well? Or do you feel like it is a battle every time?
I think it's less of a battle every time, so maybe it is. Maybe
you end up just like exercising that part of the brain where you go, you know, you got to do it, just do it now because it's easier.
It's also part for me, again, it's like, if I was a six-figure business owner, how would six-figure Sophia do this? And I think, and then taking the emotion out of it, taking myself out of myself. Well, actually, six-figure Sophia's going to deal with it. She's going to handle it. So let's handle it, you know? And then it almost, it comes off your shoulders. It becomes six-figure Soph's issue rather than my issue. It's like playing that mental game with yourself.
I love that. I really love that.
Yeah, but of course she flipping works.
Yeah, she should go on holiday for 2 months of the year. Yeah. Eventually, and look, I think that is a really good place to stop. Thank you so much for spending time like this. I've really enjoyed the first face-to-face one. It's a bit of a different energy. I'm sure I've sat awkwardly all the way through.
Yeah,
but you've been all right. But thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to share.
Brilliant, it's lovely. Thank you.